Hi, why am I doing these tests on tapes? Well, I'm using what's called the method scientifique, or the scientific method, depends what part of the world you come from. And what it quite simply is this. If you're going to do a test, make sure you can compare it to something else. Otherwise, there's no point. If I get myself a high-end deck and a high-end tape and I run it up, and then I get myself another tape and I run it up in another deck, I can't tell you that that tape's better than that one because they were done on two different decks. It's the news audio section. Today, a high-end tape was tested in a Revox. A different tape was also tested in a different machine. The calibration of both of these machines was to see the bestest and the goodest, and the NAC called it the bestest. Because the machines are high-end domestic models, we have no way of telling you how to set them the same. So we do not know how to get the best out of the tapes. But our high-end test will tell you the best tape is. Oh dear, I've just tried the tape on another machine and the results was different. Still excellent, but not the same. Oh dear, the best tape machine is, it used the Sony and no, it sounded better on the day. Oh dear, should I have given it more bias? Or was it, why it sounds so different? Or maybe the azimuth was wrong. Oh no, I know, let's do a fair test. Let's give the two different machines, two different tapes and two different signals and see which sounds the best. That's fair. We can then actually call the results because obviously the one that sounds best is the best. Or is it? Oh dear, maybe I've got something wrong there. And with that, back to the studio and Gary. I can tell you which deck might be better, but only if I use the same tape in both decks. So let's not get confused here. When I'm doing these tape tests, what I'm actually doing is I'm testing two things. First of all, how does that tape perform in that deck? The deck I happen to be using is a teac 1200, and the reason I'm using that is because I bought it and it's new and I know that it's set right. The other thing I'm doing is I'm testing how good that tape is against another tape, because I will put another tape in the teac 1200, and if the Philips works better than the Memorex or vice versa, it will be shown up on the figures. The Cheezer tape was a good example of how the figures show what's happening, and also the Philips noise level was different to the Memorex noise level. That sort of thing shows up, but only because I'm using the same deck every time. Now, later on, I'm going to start using some other decks with some bias controls and stuff. But what I'm going to have to do is, in order to be able to test, I'm going to have to either use the same deck on the same tapes or the same tapes on the same deck. You won't know, because you won't have the same deck as me, whether it's any good in your machine. That is why I'm using one that is set to the standard. So this is the standard as laid down by the IEC. And it says here that Type 1, Type 2 reference was made by BASF, Type 3 was made by Sony, and Type 4 by teac. It says, unlike consumer tapes, which were manufactured continuously over years, each reference tape was made in a single production batch by the IEC-approved factory. These batches were large enough to fill the needs of the industry for many years. A second run was impossible. Because the chemists were unable to replicate the reference with proper precision, from time to time the revision of the standards. So the final revision took place in April 1994. In 1987, Liebert wrote that while the market clearly branched into distinct incompatible premium and budget subtypes, the IEC tried in vain to select an elusive market average. This, according to Liebert, explained sudden demand for built-in tape calibration tools that were unheard of in the 1970s. What that means is you had to twiddle with it to make it work right. Let's look at a performance test from the 1960s from a large company.
At the edge of the Sahara, Shell have found a long, straight, level road to prove how an ingredient in Shell petrol gives you miles per gallon. All petrols are a blend. Shell has 7 ingredients, each with a job to do. One ingredient gives you mileage. Now watch. The white car gets a gallon of Shell with this ingredient. The black car gets a gallon of Shell without. The RAC are there to make sure that no bias can come from cars or drivers. We're off. The instructions: drive at a steady 40 until the petrol runs out. They've been driving now for nearly an hour, and both cars are still running. In just a minute, the black car's stopping. That's it, out of petrol. But the car with the mileage ingredient goes on for another 2 3/4 miles. Proof that Shell gives you mileage. Get good mileage by the gallon at any Shell station. Come and collect, anytime.
2 identical, reasonable cars, the sort that anybody could have and use, current at the time of the test, and not bad performance. They weren't testing the cars, they were testing the fuel they put in the cars, in the same way as the tapes are on test, not the machines. Can you imagine that one being as good as that one? Well, if they put the same fuel in, would it be a fair test? That's the thing you have to think of. I found this article expresses what the actual standard is, and it tells you there that they didn't use it very much before the 1970s, when they started mucking about with tapes, and that now the deviation was only 1 dB, and for Type 4 tapes it was maximum 3 dB. So comparisons with decks without knobs are applicable. Now I'm assuming, because actually the test results showed it, and yes, it gives good results on that. So what you need to know, if you've got a deck or a boombox or anything else that will record tapes but hasn't got all the high-end controls on it, you need to know that if you get a certain result with a Philips, you will get a similar result with a Maxell, or you'll get a slightly different result with a Maxell. If you look at my test results, you will get an idea of what to look for. You can also see if you've got a standard deck and you drive it hard, what result will it have on that tape. For instance, the Bassif Type 2 did not distort particularly badly when it was driven hard, but it did distort. But you couldn't actually get it past a certain point. The machine could not, on standard bias, on standard calibration, could not overdrive that tape particularly well. This is what you need to know. So, method scientific, use a standard that you can compare against. So that's what I'm doing. The results, as far as I'm concerned, are twofold. First of all, anybody who buys a teac 1200 or the other teac that's available at the moment, the one with the CD player, they will know that they will get results comparable to mine. Westlife, various other people have got those decks. Other people will know that if they've got a deck with a standard result, like a Sony without a bias control, that if they get a reasonable result with a Philips, they will get a similar or slightly better result with the Maxell for similar reasons. And if they are that way inclined, if they really are audiophiles and they want to really try and get the best results, first of all, why are they using a deck without adjustment? But secondly, they can take my figures and say, well, if Gary Keep It Simple had a problem with overdriving this tape, maybe I will as well. Maybe I'll keep the levels down to the same sort of levels that he was getting good results at and see how I go from there. Gives him a starting point, not an end point, and not an hour's worth of recordings that are no good because the tape couldn't take it. Also points out some other problems. But anyway, that's the way I'm doing it. So, method scientific. Have a nice day. If you think you could get anything out of this video, then please subscribe. Do you realise that subscribing actually makes my videos more popular with other people? It makes them show up more. So please, if you haven't subscribed and you've started watching my videos, give a click. If you want to do a like, that's also appreciated, because that also makes it more popular. Costs you nothing, makes the channel better. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.